Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for this fireside chat. My name is Perry Chorin. I graduated from Tufts in 2008, and I'm a volunteer with the Young Friends of Tufts Advancement. At Tufts, I majored in English and minored in entrepreneurial leadership. I was also a member of the men's varsity lacrosse team and Theta Delta Chi. Now, besides being a member of YFTA, I'm also a board member of the Tufts Alumni Athletic Group, and I help the Tufts Admissions Network by interviewing prospective students in the summer and the fall. After Tufts, I pursued my law degree, and I'm now a family law attorney in the DC area, specifically at Ain and Bank. I live in Virginia with my wife, Rachel, and our dog, Breck. Tonight's fireside chat is being run in conjunction with our annual March to the Top fundraising campaign, which is a month-long campaign that encourages our alumni to support funding priorities on campus through a series of special monetary challenges. This year, these funding priorities include the COVID-19 response, diversity, equality, and inclusion, the Unexpected Hardship Fund, and financial aid. Tonight's an opportunity to learn more about one of these priority areas, the COVID-19 Response Fund. I'm very excited to have Jim Glaser, Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences at Tufts, here with us tonight to talk about this fund. Pre or post-pandemic, we'd be by a fireside, but thank you for joining us virtually. Now, this fund, some of the information is going to talk about the critical support that's needed for this fund to provide support for the current students at Tufts. Dean Glaser, I'm sure, is well known to most of you or maybe all of you tonight. In addition to his role as dean, he's a professor of political science and has firsthand experience teaching through his pandemic. I also read your bio, Dean Glaser. You've also been published, I believe, 3 books and many articles, which was not mentioned in this, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that, so congratulations on the publications. Dean Glaser joined the Tufts faculty in 1991. He's been serving as the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences since 2015. He's contributed so much to Tufts' success over the years, and his leadership during 2020 was no exception. Dean Glaser, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Perry. I'm delighted to be here. There's one other important part of my biography, which is I'm the parent of 2 Tufts alum.
It's very important.
My daughter graduated in 2014 and my son graduated in 2017. And with their liberal arts degrees, they're out in the world, both of them doing really well. So I am not a Tufts alum myself, but having spent 31 years, this will be my 31st year at Tufts, and having 2 children who are Tufts alums, Tufts is in my soul. That I can tell you.
It's good. I like to hear that. Now, for everybody attending the event, before we jump into our discussion, I want to encourage everyone to post any questions that you might have in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get as many questions as we can at the end of our conversation. So, Dean Glaser, I actually want to ask you about something you just mentioned. You've been at Tufts now 31 years. Before we get into specifics about the COVID-19 Response Fund and Tufts' response to the pandemic, what's kept you coming back those 31 years to Tufts?
That's a good question. You know, I moved here from California. I'm not a Californian, but I married a Californian, and I had 10 great years in the Bay Area at Stanford and at University of California, Berkeley, and I got a job at Tufts. And my wife and I thought that we would come here, try it out for 3 years, and then try to get back to California. We loved California, and my wife's family is there. And that was 31 years ago, so obviously that didn't happen that way. You know, I've stayed at Tufts because it's been a fantastic place to grow my career, to have a very varied career. I've been able to teach and write, as you mentioned, which is very important to me, to be a scholar and to be a teacher. And over the years, I've gotten so much pleasure from my students and seeing them go out into the world. But also it's been a place where I've been able to exercise leadership in successive dean roles. I was dean of undergraduate education when you were at Tufts, and an academic dean for 4 years, and now I've been dean of the school for 7 years. So I've had a lot of different experiences, even though I've been in the same place. And I don't know that that would have happened if I was at a different institution. You know, it's a big place, in that we have, you know, sort of a first class faculty and spectacular students. And of course, we're connected to engineering and Fletcher and the medical school and all that. It is clearly a major institution, but it's a small enough place that if you aspire to, you can have an impact.
Mhm.
So I just feel really lucky. I don't know, blessed, I think is the word, that Tufts happened to me. Um, and uh, and I have, you know, I came out of a large PhD program. My friends went everywhere. None of them are at the same place that they started. I'm
Yeah.
really the only one who stayed in place. But it's because Tufts is a special place. It's a place that lives by its values, or it tries to, and I think does a pretty good job. And it's a place with great people.
That's one of the things that when I look back on my time at Tufts, that you mentioned that it's a large institution, but it's small enough. And I realized looking back on my time at Tufts, it was small enough that you might run into somebody on campus that you haven't seen in a while. You can run into your friends when you want to, whatever it is. But it was large enough that I could take any course that I wanted. I could be involved with athletics, with academics, with extracurriculars, with other things. So that mix, I think you hit that right on the head. I think that was a big thing for me. And I think that's a big thing for students looking for universities, is Tufts is both small and big. Before we get into the pandemic again, I want to ask you this, stay on kind of your history at Tufts. What's the biggest positive change that you've seen at Tufts over your time there?
Mhm. Well, we've had great leadership, really great leadership. President Bacow and President Monaco in particular have really changed the institution. And President Bacow was really a people president. I mean, he really invested heavily in resources to support the faculty, and we grew the faculty during the Bacow years, and we were able to bring in some spectacular people. And of course, he had a strong uh, sense that financial aid was critically important to us, to
Yeah.
be able to attract the students that deserved to be at a place like Tufts. And we expanded our financial aid budgets and our support for financial aid students during those years. President Monaco has been the infrastructure president. Not that he doesn't care about financial aid, because certainly he does, and not that he doesn't care about faculty quality and faculty support, because certainly he does. But this has been a period of time where major investments have been made in our infrastructure. We have 3 new science buildings, 2 which are operational and 1 which will become operational next winter. One is a laboratory science building, 1 is a dry science building, and 1 is going to be a data science building that will house economics, math, computer science, some pieces of Fletcher. We have a sort of much stronger energy infrastructure on campus. Almost all of the dorms have been renovated, some heavily renovated. So, you know, even since 2008 or 2007, now I'm not remembering your graduation.
2008, you got it the first time.
You know, even since 2008, if you came to campus and you walked around, I mean, you know, it'd be familiar to you, Perry. It would. You'd see all the things that you loved.
Right.
But there's a lot that's different, and it's going to continue to change, because the T is going to come to
Yep.
campus. You're going to come up out of the T. You'll see the Cummings building right there, um, and so it's going to connect us to the health science campus and the SMFA, which of course is another big change of the last 5 years, is that Tufts acquired the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. We're now connected to a world-class encyclopedic museum, like no other institution is, and so that's a lot of growth and a lot of change. And it's been really sort of a spectacular thing for me to be part of it. As dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, I'm probably the chief spender. I probably spend more money than anybody else in the university. We're the biggest school, and
Right.
both the student operation and the departments all report up to me. So I spend a lot of money, $400 million of a budget that I share with engineering, the Dean Q in engineering. But I'm also responsible for that. So, making everything work, making sure we can pay for everything, making sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew is part of my job. But to be part of this growth and change has been just really spectacular.
Good. I'll jump into these questions, but I always love hearing updates about campus and the university, so I appreciate that. So, Dean Glaser, I'm sure that this unprecedented year that still feels like we're in, but specifically 2020 has been quite a change for campus and the broader community. Can you tell us a little bit about what life on campus has been like for Tufts undergrads? What have some of the ways that their lives have changed throughout the year? What are some of the ways that, it looked like a different year on the Hill than previous years? Anything you can provide to us, I think would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, it's been curtailed. There's no question about that. We have about 85% of our students back. Of course, we have a large number of students who are remote. They're studying from home, or they're studying from, because I couldn't get a visa to come in, so they're studying from their homes abroad. And and they're living in the dormitories. They're taking classes. About half of the classes have in-person components this semester and last semester. But it is curtailed. There's no question about it. It's not been as rich or as exciting, but everybody's been able to advance their education. And I think that there's real appreciation for the well, let me put it this way, Perry. One of the things that has been really clear to me is that even with taking all of our courses and having them have heavy remote components to them, students value being at Tufts. They value the residential experience, right? I taught last semester. I taught in person in Barnum Hall.
Yeah.
I had a class of about 100, 20 of whom were in China or in California, 80 of whom were there. On the class met Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And I split the class into two because the social distance requirements in the classroom said you could only have 43 people in the room. So I said, okay, if your name is A through L, you come on Tuesday. And if your name is M through Z, you come on Wednesday. And we just alternated. And they filmed me, and then they streamed it, and you could watch it when you wanted to watch it. But students came to class, even though they could watch it on the screen if they wanted to. They came to class, they soaked it up, they really wanted to be there. And one of the really interesting phenomena of the semester for me was at the end of every class, the student, I'm in a mask, they're in masks, they're all spread out, nobody's sitting next to each other. It was really a little weird. But when they were leaving the classroom, it was, thank you, Professor, thank you so much, thank you, Professor Glaser. It was, I've never been thanked so much in my whole career. And I think it was a function that they were just so delighted to be there and to be in person and to be in the same room with other people, even if it was weird and socially distanced.
Right.
And the whole experience, the fact that so many of them came back, even though it was curtailed, even though the dining was weird and they had to take it out and eat in their, if they couldn't eat outside in the winter, they had to eat in their rooms. And even though athletics was almost completely curtailed, and even though this school play had to be done in sort of a weird virtual format, even though they couldn't sing in the a cappella groups, there was still a great desire to be there. And it made me think, and I've been asked this a lot, as education is moving online and as it's possible to really have a good conversation. It's hard, the big class, not so easy to.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the small class, you can do it on Zoom. It works pretty well. but they want to be there.
Yeah.
They really want to be there. And the other thing I'd say, Perry, is that we were able to do some things better and differently virtually. So for instance, Tisch College ran a lecture series. They had brought in Dr. Fauci, and they brought in
I listened to him. It was great.
Oh, great. I mean, Chris Wallace, Stacey Abrams, Nancy Pelosi. I mean,
Listen to her.
all kinds of people. Matt Bai, Tufts alum, Matt Bai, Hank Azaria. I interviewed Hank Azaria. It was awesome. And just, it was so easy. And people were actually more accessible.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the same without serving a dinner or a lunch or snacks or whatever, but we made the best of it. I mean, I think we have made the best of it.
This might be tough for you to answer because you're not a student, but I want to ask you anyway, based on just your observations of being around campus. When I was a student there, Tisch Library, even Fletcher Library, the athletic fields, the cafeterias, there were just certain areas that, you know, were motivated by student life. They had an energy of student life. And if you wanted, yes, of course, to do your homework at Tisch and to prepare for classes, but to maybe catch up with somebody that you don't necessarily live with or isn't a close friend, those were areas you could do it. The libraries, the cafeterias, those type of places. Obviously, with the pandemic, that type of thing must have been curtailed. What's the student energy like on campus now? What do you observe if you take a stroll through campus on a nice spring day?
Well, the spring has brought people out. It's actually been pretty exciting for me. I work from home 3 or 4 days a week, and I go into the campus once or twice a week. And during the winter, it was very, very quiet. It really was. It just, it was curtailed. But with the better weather, we're seeing students outside. We've put Adirondack chairs all around campus, and lights up. And in fact, these are things that the COVID-19 fund has enabled. So they're gathering places for students, and they're just out more, and it's become liberating.
Yeah.
I would say the hardest months were really November, December, January, February. March has been much better.
Yeah,
and,
that makes sense.
The other thing is the library's been open the whole time. It's been very quiet, even though students are welcome there, and even though it's possible to reserve a seat or whatever. It's just, this whole thing has put a blanket over everybody's activity, and I'd be lying if I showed you. It's been hard. It has been hard.
So turning to how hard it's been, Tufts made this COVID-19 response fund. Can you tell us a little bit about what that fund is, what it's supposed to address, and who manages it?
Yeah. Well, Dean Q and I manage it. The two of us share responsibility for the student divisions. That includes the Dean of Student Affairs, reports up to us. The Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Students reports up to us. The registrar, admissions, library, all those people report up to us, and we share responsibility for those units. And the COVID fund has really been spent in those units. There has been some funding that's made some things possible in classrooms. So for instance, the fund made it possible for us to hire tech TAs in some of our classes, because if you're teaching hybrid, you've got students there in the classroom, and you've got students who are sort of piping in virtually. It's really hard. That turned out to be the hardest thing, actually, is monitoring those two student populations. So having somebody who could help you do that in real time during the class, that was a really, really sort of good thing for the dean's office to be able to provide the faculty. And the fund enabled us to do that. Like I said, the fund created spaces on campus for students to gather, and they were used, especially because the dining was so limited. The dining spaces were so limited, so students were outside eating in the nicer weather periods, eating in those chairs and eating in the areas that were all lit up. So the COVID fund really enabled us to have some semblance of togetherness, um, in both in the classroom and outside the classroom.
Right.
One other thing I wanted to say, Perry, is that
Yep.
I meet with the deans of about 14 other schools. We're schools all of our sort of size and
But outside the NESCAC?
yeah, outside of NESCAC. It's in fact there are no NESCAC schools, and it's Brandeis, BU, BC, Syracuse, George Washington, Notre Dame,
Okay.
Miami, Wake Forest, Tulane, NYU. So and a few others, and we compare notes about once a month. We get together, we compare notes. Tufts did it better than everybody else did.
Well, how'd they do it better?
Well, I mean, just if you look at the results, I mean, my friend who's the dean at Notre Dame, I'm sure they do great things at Notre Dame. Don't get me wrong. They just didn't control the health. Their health policies were just not the same. Their testing wasn't the same. They didn't do surveillance testing, and they just had big outbreaks. They had to shut everything down for a couple of weeks. They started earlier because they wanted to finish at Thanksgiving. But by starting earlier, they started in the middle of a spike. I mean, they just had big time challenges.
Yeah.
It's not that we didn't have challenges, of course we did, but comparing our results, which is keeping people safe, the number one priority.
Absolutely.
I'm really proud. I'm really proud of what we accomplished. I could see it. I could hear it. And compared to what all of our colleagues were doing. Some places didn't even have an in-person component at all. GW didn't have an in-person component at all.
Yeah. I remember I was on a YFTA call with President Monaco, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. We were able to be on a call with him, and I was blown away by how much testing, contact tracing, just the extensive amount of resources and everything that went into Tufts' reaction to the pandemic. And I think the results show you that was all very productive.
Well, having a health
lab
scientist as your president at this moment in time, that turned out to be a very good.
Too, yeah.
It really did, because he made data-driven decisions that were, like, when do you start? A lot of our peers started early. He said, I'm looking at where things are going to go. If we start on September 7th, which sometime is about when we started, then we'll be onboarding people at a low point, and it's going to establish our bubble. And we established a better bubble than anybody else did. Now that bubble did get pricked at some point,
right?
As the community's infections started to filter into our campus, but he made great decisions. I think he's very well respected, and he's been with us for about 9 years. The faculty and the staff have great respect for him, but I think he even elevated it, because of his stewardship of the university through this period of time. He did great work, and he got his hands dirty. He's there. I got to tell you, he's there making decisions with the coordinating committee. I won't say I hired a staff person who came from a very, very prominent university.
Okay.
And I said to her, "What's the biggest difference between Tufts and your old university?" And she said, "The president." I said, "Well, really?" She says, "Yeah, the president at this other place was so hands off, and the president at Tufts, he's all in, and he's there all the time, and he's really bringing his expertise and his sort of optimism to this whole challenge."
That was the same impression I got from the call. He couldn't have been more excited to tell us about what was going on at Tufts, what was the reaction to the pandemic. It was it was great. So that's the same impression that I had. I want to go back to the response fund. Dean Glaser, I'm sure it's been, well, not I'm sure, it has been a challenge on the students this year. You mentioned that it's been a hard year. But as I understand it, there were some fun things that the response fund was able to provide for the students as well that was different versus a pre-pandemic year. Were there any specific things you can tell us about that the response fund provided to the students?
Yeah. Um, we because we started in September and we didn't finish at Thanksgiving, a lot of places sent the students home at Thanksgiving. We kept them over Thanksgiving, just as we took out spring break and we reduced it to one day, which we're in
Yeah.
now. But that means that we had some responsibility to take care of students. So at Thanksgiving, the fund enabled us to feed our students. Now our staff would normally be off Thanksgiving weekend, and we felt an obligation. They'd worked so incredibly hard. Our Dean of Student Affairs came up with this concept that we would bring in lunch and dinner from some of the restaurants in the local community.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we set it up in Gancher.
Yeah.
And Dean Q and I worked a couple of days in Gancher, handing out or checking, people's tickets and such. But it was a way of supporting the community at a time when a lot of the restaurant businesses were really suffering. So it was great for that, but it also gave students a little something, a little change of pace from some of the, dining services. Dining services does a great job, and I've always thought that the food at Tufts was really good, particularly for students. But they had really excellent meals provided by the local community, and that was costly. It was that came on top of
Absolutely.
everything else. Right now during spring break, if you look at the staycation, which is what we're doing, the list of activities that are sponsored this week, in person with masks and social distancing, but it's pretty fantastic. Zumba classes, yoga classes, watercolor classes, kickboxing, embroidery, crochet, cooking, sculpture, mindfulness sessions. They brought in a video truck. This particular week, we said to the faculty, we're in class, but see if you can clear the week of midterms
Right.
And give students that breather that they would normally get at spring break before they sort of push for that last
Absolutely.
that last 6 weeks. But there's all kinds of activities and gift bags and cactuses to decorate your room, and the fund has really enabled all of this.
Good. I mean, the Thanksgiving idea is fantastic because as you said, not only are you helping the students, but you're helping all the struggling, local restaurants. I know being from the DC area, it's a massive problem. And, the restaurants are fueled by, everyone in the DC area, a lot of whom work for the federal government. And it's been really tough on DC area restaurants. So I'm sure that was a big boost for Medford, Somerville, Boston area places. That's great.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about what the fund has done over this past year. What do you see the next few months shaping up to be in terms of how the fund is going to help students and what it's going to look like over, the next 3 to 6 months?
Well, hopefully the fund will have served its purpose and we will be back to normal or near normal. It's not going to be near normal this summer, but it's going to be near normal in the fall. As I was saying to you before we got on, I'm an obnoxious optimist. I am. But I think I've even rubbed off on my most pessimistic friends. We are planning to be in person. And though there might be some restrictions, but it's going to be a much, much freer environment. And so the fund will have served its purpose.
Yeah.
One of the things that I feel uh, really one of the more unfortunate things about this was not just the loss of the in-person experience, but the loss of the exclamation point at the end of the experience, which is commencement. So um, class of 2020, when we announced that commencement would just be virtual, the class of 2020 had a sort of campaign to say, we really want to do something in person.
Understandable.
And President Monaco said, okay, we hear you, and we'll do something in person when it's possible to do something in person. And so, my hope is that the fund will help do something for for the graduates of 2020 when we put on some kind of in-person celebration, commencement, graduation for them. The class of 2021 is going to have sort of a semi-in-person commencement.
Okay.
And the fund is going to help us with that, but we're setting up 57 different in-person ceremonies. Of course, it'll be masked and socially distanced, but it'll have regalia and speechifying and pomp and circumstance and names read and walking across the stage. But we can only do it in groups of about, 60.
Okay.
And that'll be my majors, and the faculty will revolve. But the staff are going to be there for 3 straight weekends, including myself, running through these 57 different ceremonies. We're going to do them before. Pardon me?
Bring some coffee.
Yeah. Well, we will film them, and then we will stream them on commencement Sunday. Yeah. So we'll have this in-person component, and I think it's going to be sweet and great. It won't have parents or family there with them, which is unfortunate, but it will allow students to graduate with friends and faculty. But for the students in these 2 classes, it just wasn't quite the same thing, and we're hoping to use the fund to help sort of make up for that.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so correct me. I'm going to try to summarize a little bit about what I know between the COVID-19 Response Fund and I want to make sure I get the name correct, the Unexpected Hardship Fund. So it's based on what you've told us, the COVID-19 Response Fund has been very helpful in the past. It's very helpful this semester. It will help with those graduation events that you just told us about, but then hopefully that'll be the end of the fund come the fall semester. As for the Unexpected Hardship Fund, it's my understanding that has been around for many years, that because of the pandemic, it became more of a focal point, and that will continue to be around. So if there's a student in the fall who needs money for a plane ride home because their family doesn't have it because of the pandemic, that would fall under the Unexpected Hardship Fund. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if we've had a student who had a fire in their apartment, needed to, clean up and get new stuff. We've had students who, during the pandemic, the burdens on their families were unexpected, and we were able to provide students with support that went beyond their financial aid packages. So that fund has been around for a while. It was definitely important to us as we've worked our way through the pandemic, and it will continue to be important to us. There's one other thing that's probably worth noting, which is that Tufts is a full need institution. We're one of 70 or so in the country that's a full need institution, which means if your need changes, your aid changes. And so if your parents lose a job, or if you have a sibling who starts going to college, your financial aid package will change. We're committed to that. And as we anticipated going into a recession, we worried that it would have a huge burden on our financial aid. So we were able to raise a couple of $1 million of what we call extraordinary financial aid.
Yep.
So that we would be able to meet any the the requirements of any students who had changes in their family circumstances. And those dollars are challenge dollars. So we're hoping to raise another 2 million in addition to the 2 million that we raised, so that we're able to live up to Tufts' commitment to support students even as their circumstances change.
That's great. Well, Dean Glaser, I appreciate all of those answers that you've given us. I want to turn a little bit to Q&A from the attendees. This is a question that comes from Judith. How, if at all, is Tufts helping students around mental health issues specifically related to the pandemic this year? It's got to be tough. It's tough on everybody, but being a student, it must be particularly difficult. How is Tufts helping those students out?
Yeah, it's an important question, and we have a first-class counseling center and our health services. We have done some things because of the pandemic. Much of it has sort of gone online, so telehealth has, as has happened elsewhere, telehealth has made it possible for our counselors to meet with students. We anticipated that this was going to be hard, and staffed up our counseling center more than we had in the past,
Good.
So that we had the capacity to serve students. And then, I think just sort of recognizing that that the pandemic creates new pressures on students. We worked with faculty, and I can, again, here's where my dean's conversation with my 14 other deans, nobody else did this, but we worked with faculty to establish an exceptional pass-fail grade. So, create a safety valve in classes so that if students needed to ratchet down the pressure, they would be able to do so. We did that last spring. We renewed it in the fall, and we renewed it for the semester that we're in now. And I have to say, the faculty have said to me things like, I always had strict deadlines, and I'm sort of realizing in this moment in time, if it's a day late, if it's 2 days late, it's okay. I can be a little more relaxed and try to bring down the pressure. The pressure is always there.
Right.
So what kinds of things can we do as faculty to sort of bring down that pressure and create an environment that's a little easier for our students to live in?
Absolutely. There's a question that comes from Peter, and it actually ties in a little bit about what you were just talking about. What COVID-19 specific changes at the undergrad level have you seen that you predict will become permanent, either good or bad? It sounds like decreasing pressure on students is one, possibly moving more classes to pass fail could be another. Are there any other changes that you predict will be permanent, whether or not they're negative or positive?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said before, I think one of the things that we've discovered is why are students with us? It's not just to take the classes; it's the whole experience, right?
Yeah.
And this has really been, to me, the lesson of the experience, which is students really want to be there. They want the engagement with other students. They want the leadership opportunities. They want to be in the school play. They want to sing in the a cappella group. They want to play lacrosse. They want to go to parties and meet other young people. They want to find their identity. All these things that happen on our campus. Our previous provost used to say we want Tufts to provide a transformational experience. But one of the beautiful things for us is that between the ages of 18 and 22, you're naturally transforming, and it's great to participate in that. And so, those things that we've always done well, we will continue to do well. The pedagogy is going to change and continue to change as a result of this experience. Lots of people who were deathly afraid of online education have now recognized it's possible to do it, and that there's some things about it that actually work quite well. and we can improve our pedagogy and do exciting different things with the new tools that have developed in recent years that have now really become bread and butter for us in the pandemic. So
Absolutely.
I think there will be some change in how we teach, but those are things that are going to be sort of supplemental. I hear from faculty, they want to be in the classroom with students in person, and students want to be in the classroom in person with faculty. And what happens online is sort of enhance that, is sort of what we aspire to.
So since this is a fireside chat, I'll tell you a quick story about my senior year. I had matured in my mind, I think, and realized that I hadn't experienced all that Tufts had provided to me. So I had made, and this goes towards your point that students want things in person. I had made a goal of mine to attend events that I hadn't attended yet previously. So I went to an a cappella concert. I went to a hockey game. I went to my first musical. I went to my first play. Um, I did certain things that just as a silly 18-year-old, right, I didn't think was important. But then as I looked back at my 3 years as I was going into my senior year, I said, I'm going to do all of these things. And so I think that point can't be emphasized enough, that students just want whatever it is, they want it to be in person, right? Whether it's classes, whether it's interactions with their friends. And it's really cheerful for me to hear that teachers want that too, because that means that student teacher interaction is not only benefiting the student, but is also benefiting the teacher, or the professor, excuse me. So I love to hear that. Let me ask you this. This is from Thomas. So we were mentioning the call that I was on with President Monaco, and he was talking about the COVID-19 testing and the protocols and the contact tracing. It sounds like some of the attendees would just like a brief summary from you on what Tufts is doing for the students, how they're testing them, how they're contact tracing. I know that you've probably talked about this a lot, but it's helpful for some of us to hear what Tufts is doing and how far ahead potentially they are compared to some other universities.
Yeah. Well, the contact tracing, I'm sorry, the surveillance testing is really the key.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that really was the key. And so everybody was required, if faculty who were teaching on campus or staff who were on campus, as well as students, were required to test, for faculty once a week, for undergraduates twice a week.
Yeah.
And in fact,
I was blown away when I heard that from him.
It's a lot. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, I'll go and do my little test, which I've done every week since the school started in September. It's in and out. It's very, very fast. And you hear within 12 hours. So I'll test tomorrow at 8, and or 7:45, and I will hear by the time I go to bed what my results are. If somebody has a positive result, they immediately, within 15 minutes, we have people moving into these modular units that are set up on the tennis court. I'm a tennis player, not a great one, but an avid one.
Me too.
It's an important part of my life. And the tennis courts don't come to Tufts to play tennis this year. The tennis courts are covered by these modular units that are allowing us to quarantine or isolate students who have tested positive. And it required an enormous operation to be able to go sort of immediately identify somebody who's tested positive, put them right into the modular units, and then contact trace, people who they had been in touch with, and then set them up in quarantine and isolation. It required, and the residential life staff had to be on duty just an enormous amount. It required the dining staff to figure out how to get food to people in these quarantine units.
Yep.
I know that it felt heavy to students. It did, but we kept people safe. We didn't have a single trip to the hospital all fall semester, and we did have one in the winter intersession. One person did go to the hospital. I don't know what's happened in February or March, but I don't think anybody has. We had not a single case that went from a student to a faculty or staff member. Some faculty and staff did get infected, but they were infected from their lives, not from students. So the system that President Monaco and Michael Jordan, the epidemiologist who is our COVID czar, and Marie Caggiano, who is our new medical director, who came last summer. Can you imagine starting your job and then like plunging right in? They've done an amazing job setting up a system that really worked. It was very, very rigorous. It really worked, and they kept people safe, and the proof was in the pudding.
Absolutely. So connected to that, and this is from Melissa. This is going to be our last question, Dean Glaser. Tufts has done a great job with the pandemic. On reflection, is there anything that Tufts could have done better?
Yeah, sure. There's always things that you can do.
There's always something, but is there anything specific that you can think of?
Yeah. What could we have done better? I think the COVID fund really did allow us to set up spaces for students. I wish we'd been able to do even more of it.
Yeah.
They were very hungry for it. I mean, we're constrained in a way that we wouldn't be. My friend who's the dean at University of Miami, he didn't have this problem, but in the cold and dark New England winter, it was very isolating.
Right.
And I wish we'd been able to do, particularly in those winter months, more for students to engage with each other and get some relief from it. But that's a priority, but it's the third priority. The first priority was keeping everybody safe and healthy. The second priority was making sure that they could advance their educations. And then the third thing was to enrich the experience. And we accomplished all three of those, but I think that area was where it was, I wish we could have done more. I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big takeaway I've had from this is that not only did Tufts do a great job, but I appreciate you telling us, what you've talked about with those other universities was ahead and has been ahead. And that's great to hear as an alum. So I just want to thank you very much for coming here. I want to thank you for all that you've told us, for answering my questions, for listening to my silly stories, for telling us about the COVID-19 Response Fund. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was a very challenging year for Tufts. It's still challenging. But as an alum, I always, and I told you this early on, I feel it's very energizing to not only hear about what's going on campus, but how Tufts is making this, as you said, how Tufts is making it safe for students, how it's advancing their education. But as you said, still keeping in mind that you want them to have a college experience. So I really appreciate all that. And I just want to thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And I really appreciate everybody who joined us and for the support of our alumni and parents and friends. My job is to kind of hold it all together, but it's only possible through the kindness of our community and the generosity of our community. So I'm very grateful that we have so much support around us. It's made a big difference. It will continue to make a difference. And it's going to, we're going to come back and we're going to be even better because we were so successful this year. I think it makes us stronger. Our applications are way, way up. I don't think that's an accident. I think it's because we've shown that we're a place that cares and a place that can do it well.
Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here tonight, for joining our first March to the Top event this week. It was great to have you all here. I hope you enjoyed the fireside chat between us. A reminder that the COVID-19 response fund, the main fund that Dean Glaser told us about tonight, it's one of our funding priorities during our March to the Top campaign. Through March 31st, so that is 9 days, every 50 gifts to this fund will secure an additional $5,000 for COVID-19, for the COVID-19 response fund. Thanks to the generosity of Hannah Snowjay, Thomas Snowjay, Nancy Goldstein, and Stephen Goldstein. Thank you for so much. I think the challenge donations are fantastic. It's an extra incentive. So thank you to Hannah, Thomas, Nancy, and Stephen. Please help Tufts continue to navigate this very difficult time with first and priority is the COVID-19 response fund, but to the Unexpected Hardship Fund and the other things that Tufts is doing right now to make life for students as safe as possible and just possible in general. You can maximize your impact by making your gift at givingdays.tufts.edu. The link for the site is also in the chat. Again, thank you, Dean. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you enjoyed the program.
Thank you all. Thank you, Perry.
Yep.